Hey everybody, and welcome to the next episode of BarTalk, the podcast for the North Carolina State Bar. I'm your host today, Peter Bolac, the Assistant Executive Director at the State Bar, and I'm here with Brian Oten.
Hello, everyone.
Brian is our Ethics Counsel at the State Bar, and we are back for another edition of a quarterly meeting recap.
I know that our listeners have just been waiting patiently for this next episode, so thank you for your patience.
Yeah, there's been a few tears on our end trying to get this thing done, and it really, we really dropped the ball and dropped the mic.
But we're here. We're ready with some updates from the State Bar Council, some updates on what's going on with the ethics program, and we're just ready to go. So, Peter, you want to jump into it?
Yeah, let's get to it. Due to ongoing health concerns with the Omicron variant and the pandemic, the State Bar was once again forced to hold remote meetings, and so we conducted the quarterly meetings in January via Zoom and streamed the open meetings on the State Bar's YouTube page. And it was another successful quarterly meeting. The first thing to mention is that we welcomed a great new class of counselors. Every year you end up with some new State Bar counselors just because the counselors' terms end and they rotate off. But this year we had a big class. This is going to be one of the biggest classes we've had in a while. And so we're happy to welcome Michael Peters from Tarboro, Mark Herring from Lenoir County, Ashley Campbell from Wake County here in Raleigh, Kimberly Moore from here in Raleigh, Meredith Nicholson from Durham, Judge Tom Langen from Pilot Mountain, Manisha Patel from Greensboro, George Lauren from Charlotte, Tamika Shafiq Horton from Charlotte, and T. Greg Jones from Salisbury. We also are welcoming Mary Oxley from Forest City, North Carolina, and Zealand McKinney from Murphy. It's one of the largest classes that I've been a part of here at the bar, and I think we're expecting big things from these new counselors.
Absolutely.
Brian, you're going to get us kick-started by giving us some updates from the actions and activities of the Ethics Committee.
Right, and I know everybody who's listening to this right now who's either driving or perhaps running on a treadmill, get ready because this is going to be some exciting stuff. But truthfully, the ethics process, as you know, is here. It's one of our most proactive efforts that we have to protect the public, and we protect the public by stepping alongside lawyers and offering guidance on a variety of issues. So the Ethics Committee this past quarter met and recommended, and the council ultimately accepted the recommendation to adopt 3 different opinions. These are opinions that were previously published, and we received comment on them, and in light of that comment, the committee and the council ultimately agreed to, again, adopt these opinions. We're talking about the first one addressing a lawyer's ability to handle contraband, namely sexually explicit images of minors, which is an issue that sometimes comes up in domestic practices. An opinion that addresses a departing lawyer's email account and what firms have to do when a lawyer leaves that law firm, what they have to do with that email account, whether or not to keep it open for some period of time or put it in auto reply. There's a lot of good pointers in that opinion. And the last one deals with charging fees to a separately represented party in a real estate transaction. All of these different new formal ethics opinions will be on the State Bar's website for your perusal and to serve as a resource. We also issued a new formal ethics opinion for publication. This is 2022 FEO 1. It deals with the conflict and really kind of the tension that's created when a lawyer will serve the dual role of guardian ad litem and attorney advocate. So that opinion is out for publication. If you have any sort of comment on what we issued, feel free to send your comments to ethicscomments@ncbar.gov. But really, I'd say that one of the bigger issues that was published this year, or excuse me, this quarter, was a set of rule amendments that deal with confidentiality of information. And this really stems from an opinion that was published in 2020 dealing with the confidentiality of information contained in the public record.
And I think our our longtime listeners will be well versed in this opinion
Yes.
because we've been bringing it up almost every quarter for the
Right.
last year.
Right. The subcommittee debated this, as well as the full ethics committee debated this over all of 2021 in what seemed to be an aeonic process. But nevertheless, we find ourselves finally here in January 2022 with a proposed resolution to the issue, and this is an amendment that we have for the Rules of Professional Conduct. The first amendment is to Rule 1.6. Which deals with the confidentiality of information. It's a proposed amendment to the comment that basically says a lawyer's legal research and legal knowledge gained during the course of the representation is not to be considered confidential. A client doesn't have any expectation of privacy with that information. But then the more substantive amendment deals with Rule 1.9, and this is where we find ourselves in a departure from what is currently the state of the rules. Currently, lawyers are supposed to keep everything that they learn during the course of a representation confidential. This amendment to Rule 1.9 would basically say that when you're dealing with a former client's information, not current client, a former client's information, yes, lawyers are still supposed to keep that confidential, except that a lawyer can reveal or disclose information about a former client if that information is contained in a public record, if it was disclosed at a public hearing, or was otherwise publicly disseminated, provided that disclosure is not going to be embarrassing or detrimental to the client. So those proposed amendments, both the comment to Rule 1.6 as well as the substantive amendments to Rule 1.9, are going to be published in the State Bar Journal as well as put on the State Bar's website, along with that the proposed 2022 FEO1. Again, we welcome comments from the profession. This is your chance to get involved in the self-regulation of our profession. Every comment is considered, and you can send those comments to ethicscomments@ncbar.gov.
Brian, there was a amendment to the Rules of Professional Conduct, a proposed comment regarding cultural competency. Can you give us a little update on that?
Sure. So the proposed comment to Rule 1.1, this was something that was originally published, I believe, after the April 2021 meeting. After receiving some comment, the Ethics Committee sent it back to subcommittee. The subcommittee revised the proposed language and ultimately published a new version of the proposed comment. The comment states essentially that a lawyer's competency is enhanced by their awareness and knowledge of implicit bias and other cultural differences that can impact the representation. It is an aspirational comment. It is something that, again, really just kind of tries to emphasize that not to say that a lawyer is incompetent if they don't know about that, but that their representation of a client is really made that much better if they are aware of those issues that can impact the representation. That was published over the past quarter. We received just one comment that really raised some concerns or similar concerns to things that were previously raised, and the Ethics Committee did not feel that the comment received really compelled further consideration. So they recommended adoption of that comment to Rule 1.1 to the Council, and the Council ultimately approved the comment and has sent that on to the Supreme Court for review.
Well, again, the Ethics Committee once again doing great work. And the formal ethics committee meets every quarter, but the State Bar's ethics department is always on standby for lawyers to get advice and seek opinions and seek advice, informal advice or confidential advice on the rules of professional conduct. There are a number of ways to seek that advice.
Right, and I'll say the primary way is to send us an email at ethicsadvice@ncbar.gov. People, of course, will call, and certainly you can call the State Bar, and if you're in an emergency situation, then you can tell the receptionist that you are a lawyer seeking ethics advice and you have an emergency, and the receptionist will try to find someone on the ethics staff just immediately to contact or to respond back to you and provide that advice. But there's a new way.
Yeah, this is a great little segue here into something that I'm sure many of you have already experienced at the State Bar is our new member portal, where you are now able to pay your dues and file your CLE annual report form and even request ethics advice in the portal. One of the neat things about requesting ethics advice in the portal is the advice that you get will be available, and you'll be able to see the history of the ethics advice that you have sought and received through the ethics department, all kept and accessible in your member portal. We've had a great experience so far with this rollout. A lot of lawyers in there paying dues. Well over 10,000 lawyers have already filed their annual report forms for CLE. We're excited to have this new all-in-one portal and continue to add to it over the year, and we're really excited to have it and have that there for you. So back to the quarterly meeting, Brian. One of our biggest committees for activity is typically the Issues Committee, and so they've kicked off the year again. The first thing that they did was hear some reports from various subcommittees that were working all throughout last year in 2021. And if you give us a little update on those reports.
Sure. So the reports that were presented at the January meeting were the final report and recommendations from the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, as well as the subcommittee studying regulatory change. And both of these committees were meeting, like Peter said, over the past year, engaged in a great number of heavy discussions, and their reports are presented to the Issues Committee ultimately to review those recommendations and see what action, if any, the State Bar Council wants to take. The tough thing, though, is that because of the significance and the importance of the topics addressed in these meetings, really Zoom conversations or Zoom meetings really do not lend themselves well to thorough conversations where everybody can have the opportunity to be heard and feel heard. So the Issues Committee, in both regards, decided to hold off debate on those different reports and the recommendations therein until the April meeting. So you can check back after the April 2022 meeting to see exactly what the Issues Committee has done and what steps may be taken based upon those reports. But in the meantime, they're essentially in a holding pattern, but certainly because those reports were very thorough in their substance and, again, in their recommendations, the State Bar Council has that much more time to really review and dig into the recommendations. I expect a very good debate in April.
And another committee tied in with the Issues Committee that's really been doing work for now a couple of years is the committee that's studying and looking at proactive management-based regulation, and tie that in also with some cybersecurity concerns. And
Right.
so I think we've seen some good progress there, and some sort of product that is on the way here for lawyers.
Right, and this, like you said, Peter, this goes back a couple of years, and ultimately, some of you may be listening that remember a survey being sent out to the profession, asking questions about what the State Bar can do to assist lawyers proactively in maintaining these standards that we have through the rules of professional conduct. And one of the big things, the big takeaways from that survey was that folks were looking for guidance on cybersecurity issues. And so for the past year or so, the PMBR/Cybersecurity Committee has been working on creating a resource that can be sent out to all of the lawyers in North Carolina that essentially operates as kind of a self-assessment, provides some information, provides some resources that somebody can look at, as well as relevant ethics considerations, but ultimately asks a number of questions that will help you to really kind of objectively and candidly assess, are you doing everything that you can to protect the information, the sensitive information that's in your possession? So that cybersecurity and PMBR committee, they are on the verge of releasing this resource. They're looking at ways to really to kind of, I don't want to say market the resource, but really just make it accessible, make it engaging, and I think you should see something hopefully at the April meeting.
And the Issues Committee begins its work in 2022 with new ideas and obviously with guidance from the new president. And Darren Jordan, our president right now, is asked the Issues Committee to look into what has been called and termed legal deserts. Other states have looked at this issue. It's typically been defined as areas in which there's a lot more people in population in an area than there are the number of lawyers able to properly represent them. In a lot of different reports, it's been listed as about 1,000 people per lawyer. Anything more than that could be considered a legal desert. And so the Issues Committee is going to tackle this, study this year and see, look at the data here in North Carolina, try to identify some of these areas, also identify what are the possible solutions or possible ways, not necessarily to solve the issue, but try to improve the access to justice across the state. That's not just in the big cities. And so we've done some preliminary looks at the different counties across the state, and it's really about half the counties in North Carolina could be considered a legal desert if you're using the 1,000 to 1 ratio. So that
was surprising.
It is
to me,
very surprising. Yeah, it's 48 of the 50 48 of the 100 counties have fewer than one lawyer per 1,000 residents, and the smallest being Camden County, which has 2 lawyers and 10,000 people, and the largest being, as you might guess, is the 3 largest are Wake County, Mecklenburg County, and Orange County. Orange County does not have a lot of people, but it has a lot of lawyers tied in with the university, obviously.
Right.
So that's something that we're going to be looking at this year, and we're interested in ways to improve that access to justice across the state, and we'll be giving you more information in April and throughout the year as we continue to study that issue.
All right. So, Peter, I know a lot of folks that join us for this podcast are curious about what happened in the grievance committee during the quarterly meeting.
No one cares about that.
That's not what everybody turns
no
into,
one flips
turns
to
to
that.
in the journal.
No, we actually took that out this year. It's going to be like a word find. You got to find it in the journal. We've snuck it in various places. No, the grievance committee did meet, and the grievance committee's full meeting happened on January 20th, and there were 261 items considered by the grievance committee. 201 of those files were dismissed. 4 files were abated, 4 files were continued, 1 was referred to the Lawyer Assistance Program, 3 lawyers were referred to the Trust Accounting Compliance Program, 4 lawyers received letters of caution, 10 lawyers received letters of warning, 9 lawyers received admonitions, 4 lawyers received public reprimands, 2 lawyers received public censures, 12 lawyers were referred to the Disciplinary Hearing Commission for potential trials related to potential suspension or disbarment for their misconduct. It's a pretty standard quarter. Grievance committee does an incredible amount of work, and I think the new counselors probably learned very quickly the amount of material and seriousness that is undertaken by the grievance committee, because it is the hardest part of our job, hardest part of the state bar's mission is to do that, but it is something that they take seriously and do very well. Brian, the other hot topic always, and we're 2 weeks in, so people might have already started getting phone calls if they're in these particular counties, but where are we doing our random audits this quarter?
So, as we always try to emphasize, especially for those that are first-time listeners, and we talk about the random audit is truly random. It is not something that is kind of selected by a particular individual. It is a program that.
Although I will say, Brian, if someone wanted to sponsor this podcast and keep their county away from being randomly audited,
we're gonna delete that portion of that comment. But no, it truly is a random audit. And the next districts, we have 2 districts that were selected for random audit over this next quarter. That's District 11, which consists of Granville, Vance, Warren, and Franklin counties, and District 42, consisting of Henderson, Polk, and Transylvania counties. So if you're in any of those counties, you may get contacted by our random auditor, Ann Parkin, who is a delightful person, but she will need to come on out there and talk with you and check out those records. And by all means, if there's ever any sort of additional advice or questions that anybody has, even if you were not selected for a random audit and you're thinking, now that I'm thinking about random audits, I need to figure something out, contact the ethics staff. We're happy to help.
Well, we've done it again, Brian. We've made it through another quarter. The state bar continues to push on its mission, and we
Yes.
look forward to being back in person in April.
And those that are listening to this podcast, you've now reached your cool down moment. So feel
That's
free
right.
to turn it down a little bit on the treadmill or on that bike.
If you're not asleep at this point, you're going to need to find another track to play. You have not made it.
We do appreciate you all for joining us and listening to this really important information, and certainly stay up to date on the different publications between the State Bar Journal, the website, our social media. We're on Twitter and Facebook, and we try to get the information out just as quickly as possible because it really does impact the entire profession. So
Yep.
Thank you.
And we hope to have some more podcast episodes for you coming soon this month, and we'll be recording them soon. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.